A roadside vegetable seller gave $10 to a boy who was alone and hungry. Years later, a mysterious visitor appeared at his door, and what happened was surprising. "Come on, veggies. I just need to sell a little today." Jack sighed, carefully adjusting the boxes on his cart as if they were treasure. He pulled the hem of his shirt to wipe the sweat off his forehead and looked at the sky, which was starting to brighten with the rising sun. "It's going to be a good day, it will, for sure," he told himself as he left his small farm. The old wheels squeaked, and the wood was already worn out, but it was what he had. He looked at the neatly arranged vegetables and smiled proudly. Despite all the difficulties, the veggies were always fresh and beautiful. "Hey, neighbor," called Bob, his friend and neighbor, riding by on an old bike towards the market. "Today's the day, eh?" "Let's hope so, Bob," Jack replied, waving with a tired smile. "I need to sell something, even if it's just a lettuce. The electricity bill won't wait, right?" Bob stopped his bike for a moment and gave him a friendly nod. "Give me 3 carrots and 1 lettuce so I can cook a good lunch today. And listen, mate, you'll sell everything today. You'll see. An early birthday present for your 51st. Jack shrugged, trying to hide his worry. "That's what I'm hoping for, at least. Times are tough and it's getting harder to keep things going." After Bob rode off, Jack sat down on an improvised stool next to the cart, watching the empty road. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the feeling that life was a never-ending struggle. Just one more day. Just one more day, Jack. Hours passed, and almost no cars went by. The hot wind blew dust along the road, and the only sound was the birds singing. Every now and then, Jack stood up and adjusted the vegetables in the cart, hoping someone would stop. But deep down, he knew not to count on luck. Every sale was a small miracle. The sun was high, burning his skin. Jack pulled his old hat down over his eyes to shield himself from the heat as he rearranged the boxes for the 1,000th time that day. No customers yet, just the wind lifting dust across the road. Then he heard the distant sound of an engine. His heart jumped. Finally, maybe someone will buy something, he thought. It was the bus that always passed by 4 times a day. Jack knew it didn't always stop, but he decided to stand up, stretch his aching back, and wait. The bus creaked to a stop a few meters away. The doors hissed open, and a thin young man wearing wrinkled clothes and carrying a backpack jumped off, panting as if he'd been pushed out. "Sir, please," the young man cried, almost tripping over his own feet. "Let me on. I need to get to the city." The driver grumbled from inside. "You need to pay, kid." "No money, no ride. You're lucky I didn't hit you." I've got $5. The boy frantically searched his pockets. "Please, I promise I'll get the rest later." The driver gave a harsh laugh and shook his head. "I told you, $5 doesn't even cover half the fare. Either you have all the money or you stay here." Jack stood silently by his cart, watching the scene with concern. The boy looked completely lost, like someone with nowhere else to go. "Sir, please, I just need to get to the city, that's all." The boy's voice trembled, his eyes full of desperation. The driver sighed impatiently. "Enough, kid. Next time, bring the right amount." And with a loud thud, the door closed, leaving the boy standing on the dusty road, watching the bus disappear in a cloud of dust. The boy lowered his head, taking a deep breath as if trying not to cry. Jack couldn't just stand there. "Hey, son," he called, his voice firm but kind. "You all right?" The young man turned slowly, looking embarrassed. "No, sir, I'm not. I really needed that bus. If I walk, it'll take me about 8 hours." Jack studied him for a moment. Just another kid, hungry and out of luck. Jack knew that feeling all too well. After a brief pause, Jack reached into his pocket, pulled out the small bundle of cash he had, and held it out to the boy. "Here, $10. Take this and wait for the next bus. It'll be a while." The boy's eyes widened in disbelief. "But, sir, I can't take this." "It's too much." Jack gave a tired but sincere smile. "It's all I've got. It'll help you more than it's helping me right now. And it's enough to get you out of here. And kid, I know what it's like to have no one when you need help the most." The boy hesitated, clutching the money with both hands. "I don't even know how to thank you." "No need to thank me," Jack said, going back to rearranging the boxes. "Just promise that one day, if you can, you'll do the same for someone else." The boy wiped away the tears that wouldn't stop falling. "I promise, sir. One day I'll repay this kindness, I swear." Jack shrugged as if it was no big deal. "Just do what you can, son. That's all we can do around here." The young man gave a small, grateful smile, his eyes still wet. "Thank you. My name's Liam." Jack gave him a quick wave as if to say thanks weren't needed. "The next bus comes in about 3 hours. Keep an eye out and rest in the shade until then. Things will work out. And son, why don't you eat something? I've got some veggies here. It's not much, but it'll keep you going until the next bus." Liam looked at Jack, puzzled. "What? You're offering me food? For free?" Jack gave a slight smile. "Food's food, kid, and if someone's hungry, they need to eat." The boy hesitated for a moment, but hunger got the better of him. "Thank you, really." He grabbed a carrot and started eating without even realizing it. "You're a good kid, Liam. Just remember, if you ever see someone in need, do the same for them." Tears welled up in Liam's eyes again. "I'll never forget this, sir. Thank you so much." Liam tucked the money into his pocket, and before leaving, he gave Jack one last look, his smile filled with gratitude and hope. Jack simply waved and continued down the road with his vegetables. As Liam sat by the roadside waiting for the next bus, Jack felt a little lighter, as if the weight of the day had eased, even if just for a moment. Though $10 was a lot for someone with almost nothing, something inside him told him he had done the right thing. $10. Jack murmured to himself, looking towards the horizon. Hope he makes it. Years passed like leaves blown by the wind. Nearly a decade later, Jack was now 60, and things hadn't improved. In fact, they were worse. His strength wasn't what it used to be, and his farm, which had once barely kept him afloat, was more run down than ever. Jack arrived home with heavy shoulders and a tight heart. The walk back felt like it had taken an eternity, and every step only deepened the sense of defeat in his chest. As he opened the gate, he spotted Bob, his neighbor, leaning against the fence with his hat tilted back and a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. "You look rough today, Jack," Bob said, stubbing the cigarette out against the wooden fence. "Something happened?" Jack let out a deep sigh, too tired to explain. "I went to talk to that Dr. Evelyn. Thought maybe she could give me an advance, help with some repairs around the house." He shook his head, defeated. "But it was like talking to a wall. She sent me packing without a second thought." Bob stepped closer, resting his arms on the fence as if he understood more than his words let on. "That kind of people, Jack. They only see numbers. If you're not part of their profit, you don't exist." Jack took off his hat and ran a hand through his grey hair, trying to ease the tension pounding in his head. "I just needed a little push. That's all. I wasn't asking for a handout." Bob gave a slow nod and sighed. "I know, mate. I know exactly how it feels. The truth is, we're on our own out here. Nobody's coming to save us." Jack sat down on a small stool near the entrance, gazing at the horizon as the sun started to sink in the sky. "Feels like everything I planted over the years doesn't mean a thing." Bob sat down next to him, quiet for a moment. Then he gave Jack a light pat on the shoulder. "It does mean something. Might not seem like it now, but everything you've done with Heart matters. Sometimes it just takes a while to see the results." Jack let out a faint laugh, empty of joy. "Easy to say, hard to believe." Bob gave him a tired but honest smile. "Hey, we're in the same boat, Jack. Things are rough for me too. This year's harvest was a joke, and I'm counting pennies to pay the bills. But you know what? We're still here. And as long as there's another day ahead of us, we'll figure it out." Jack stayed quiet for a moment, letting Bob's words sink in. They didn't change his tough reality, but they gave him a bit of relief. It was good to know he wasn't alone in this sea of uncertainty. "Thanks, Bob," Jack murmured, his voice filled with gratitude. "Sometimes that's all we need, someone to listen." Bob smiled gently and gave Jack's shoulder another squeeze. "I'm here, mate. Anytime you need me, just call." The two sat there in silence for a while longer, watching the sun slowly disappear behind the trees. Jack sat on the porch of his old house, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze lost down the road. A warm breeze blew gently, carrying the scent of distant trees. He was tired. His body ached, and his mind wouldn't stop turning over his problems. The debts, the crumbling house, the crops that no longer brought in enough. Everything felt like an impossible mountain to climb, and he was starting to think about giving up altogether. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a powerful engine coming from the road. It wasn't like the usual cars that passed by now and then. This one sounded different, solid, like the hum of an expensive motor. Jack lifted his head, curious and a little wary. A sleek, black car, shining as if fresh from the showroom, slowed down in front of his house and pulled onto the dirt driveway. Both doors opened at the same time. From the passenger side stepped out a young man in a sharp suit, while from the driver's seat emerged an older, strong-looking man with a calm expression. Jack stood still, unsure what to think. He didn't know anyone who owned a car like that. "What do these two want here?" he muttered, adjusting his hat on his head. The young man took a few steps towards him, a soft smile on his face, like someone meeting an old friend. "Jack? Do you remember me, sir?" Jack squinted, trying to place the face. Something about the boy's voice felt familiar, but the pieces didn't quite fit. "Sorry, son, should I remember you?" The young man chuckled softly. "I'm Liam, the boy from the roadside, 9 years ago. You gave me $10 to catch the bus." Jack blinked, surprised, and slowly rose from the bench. "Liam, it's really you." Liam smiled, his eyes gleaming. "It's me, sir. I told you I'd never forget what you did for me." Jack stood there, speechless for a moment. He looked at Liam, now well-dressed, with a calm and confident expression. "So, you made it, didn't you? You turned things around." Before Liam could respond, the older man, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward and offered his hand to Jack. "My name's Tony. I'm Liam's father. He's told me a lot about you." Jack shook Tony's hand, still a bit dazed by the situation. "Pleasure to meet you, Tony, but what brings you both here after all this time?" Liam crossed his arms and smiled. "I came to keep a promise. You helped me when I needed it most, and now it's my turn." Jack gave a little laugh, still in disbelief. "Oh, son, you didn't have to do that. It was just a bit of money." "I never expected you to remember." Tony clapped his son's shoulder and smiled warmly at Jack. "But he did remember, and we're here to help. This isn't just a visit. You helped my boy through a really tough time, and I'll always be grateful to you." Jack felt a wave of gratitude rise in his chest. There was something in their expressions that told him this wasn't an empty promise. It was real. Liam had come back and Jack was no longer alone. Liam took a step closer, his eyes shining with emotion. "I've never forgotten what you did for me that day," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "I was just a lost kid, hungry and hopeless. If you hadn't given me those $10 and that carrot, I don't know where I'd be." Jack shook his head, as if to downplay the moment. "Ah, son, it was just a bit of change. No need to make a fuss over it." Liam smiled warmly, his gratitude clear. "It wasn't just money, Jack, it was so much more. It was your kindness, the way you looked at me like I mattered, even when I had nothing to offer." Tony nodded and added, "He's told me that story many times, Jack. He always said that if he ever got the chance, he'd come back to repay you." Jack scratched his head, still struggling to believe it. "Well, I just did what anyone should do." Liam chuckled, but gave Jack a serious look for a moment. "If everyone thought that way, the world would be a much better place, sir. Shh. The truth is, you were the first person to help me when I needed it most. Because of you, I caught that bus and made it to the city." He paused briefly, remembering those hard days. "I found work there, and that was just the beginning. Today, I have my own company, and my dad works with me." Jack glanced at Tony, surprised. "So things turned around for you?" Tony chuckled softly. "They sure did. And it all started with you, Jack." Liam crossed his arms and smiled again. "I knew I'd come back one day to thank you. You saved my life, and now it's time to return the favor." Jack felt his chest tighten, not with sadness, but with an emotion he couldn't quite describe. Liam's words struck deep, like an answer to all the struggles he'd faced. He looked at the young man and let out a brief, heartfelt laugh. "Well, look at you. I never saw this coming." Liam finished, his eyes warm with determination. "We're going to take care of everything. The house needs repairs, right? The roof, the fences? We'll sort that out now." For a moment, Jack felt the urge to refuse. Not out of pride, but from the feeling that maybe he didn't deserve so much. I don't know, lads. I don't want to be a burden to anyone." Liam let out a soft laugh. "A burden? Sir, this is the easy part. I've been through worse than fixing up a house. This will be no trouble at all." Tony crossed his arms and added, "We've already got a contractor lined up, just waiting for your go-ahead." Jack looked at the two of them, unsure how to respond. "You're serious about this? No joke?" Liam took a step closer, meeting Jack's gaze. "No joke, Jack. When you gave me those $10, that was all you had, wasn't it?" Jack shrugged, letting out a sigh. "Yeah, that was everything I had that day." "Well, now it's our turn, and believe me, this is just the beginning. You're not alone, Jack. We're going to fix up this house and give your farm a new lease of life." Jack rubbed his eyes with the palm of his hand, trying to hide the emotion building in his chest. "You two—" "I don't even have words, really." Tony patted Jack's shoulder. "No need for words, mate. Just let us do this for you." Liam smiled warmly, his expression light but sincere. "When I promised I'd come back to repay you, I meant it. Now's the time." Jack took a deep breath, feeling his heart settle for the first time in a long while. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. "You lads don't know how much this means to me." Tony chuckled softly. "Oh, we've got a good idea." Jack looked at them both, and for the first time in months smiled genuinely. It wasn't a forced smile, but one that came from deep within. "Well then, lads, let's get started." The following week, Jack heard an unfamiliar noise coming from the entrance to the farm. It was the rumble of trucks and the lively chatter of workers. He put down the old tools he was holding and walked to the porch, curious. There was a group of men unloading wood, new roof tiles, and various tools. At the front of the group, a tall man with a tool belt around his waist approached Jack with an open smile. "You must be Jack. I'm Carlos, the contractor Liam and Tony hired. I'm here to make this house good as new." Jack stood still for a moment, unsure of what to say. "All this so soon?" Carlos laughed, gesturing towards the roof. "Sooner's better, isn't it? We'll fix the roof, reinforce the walls, and tidy up the fences too. It can't stay the way it is. But don't worry, Mr. Jack. We'll do a top-notch job." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe Liam and Tony did this for me. And you're saying I won't need to pay a thing?" Carlos gave a reassuring wave. "Not a penny, sir. It's all taken care of. Liam made it clear. Whatever needs fixing, no skimping." Jack wiped his forehead, trying to hold back the wave of emotion rising inside him. "It's too much. I never thought anyone would do something like this for me." Carlos smiled kindly. "They spoke very highly of you. They said this house needs to come back to life, just like you gave Liam a chance when he needed it most." Jack took a deep breath, a soft smile spreading across his face, his heart full of gratitude. "Well then, looks like it's time to make this place beautiful again." Carlos gave him a wink and turned to the workers. "All right, lads, no slacking. Let's give this house a new life." Jack stayed on the porch watching the men get to work. The sound of hammers and saws was like music to his ears. He watched the old roof being taken down, the rotten wood being hauled away, and shiny new materials taking their place. For a few minutes, Jack stood there with his arms crossed, watching it all unfold as if it were a dream. After so many years of struggle, it was hard to believe that help had finally arrived. The house he thought he'd never be able to repair was coming back to life right in front of his eyes. As he stood there, Jack smiled to himself and murmured quietly, "Everything you plant eventually comes back. One way or another, it comes back." The hammers were still pounding when a car pulled up sharply at the entrance to the farm. The door swung open forcefully, and out stormed Dr. Evelyn, visibly furious. Her steps were quick and firm, and her face was red with anger. From the porch where Jack was watching the workers, he frowned as she approached like a storm. "Well, here comes trouble," Jack muttered to himself, adjusting his hat. Evelyn marched up the steps, barely pausing for breath, and before Jack could say a word, she burst out, "This is outrageous. Who authorized these expenses?" Jack took a step back, confused. "What are you on about, Doctor?" Evelyn pointed towards the activity around them, where workers were busy carrying materials and fixing the house. "I'm talking about this, Jack. Who had the crazy idea to spend so much on repairs when the farm is struggling?" Before Jack could respond, Liam appeared from inside the house, wiping his hands on his trousers and giving Evelyn a calm but firm look. "Doctor, this money has nothing to do with you, the council, or the farm." Evelyn spun towards him, even more irritated. "Oh, so it was you, and I'm supposed to believe this whole renovation just fell from the sky?" Tony, who was following closely behind his son, crossed his arms and spoke calmly. "No, Doctor. It didn't fall from the sky. My son and I are paying for everything, every penny." Evelyn stood still for a moment, processing the words, though her expression remained stern. "It doesn't matter who's paying. This is all a waste. How do you expect him to maintain this house afterwards? Or are you planning to support him for the rest of his life?" Liam took a step closer, meeting her gaze without flinching. "If we have to, we will. Jack did for me what no one else did when I had nothing. And I'm not turning my back on him now." Jack, who had been quiet until now, slowly raised his hand. Hey, hold on. No one's throwing money away here. They're helping because they want to. And if it weren't for them, this house would have collapsed on top of me by now." Evelyn huffed, folding her arms. "This is madness. There's no sense in investing in something with no return. You're all being swept away by cheap sentimentality." Tony shook his head with a calm smile. "Maybe you don't understand because all you see are numbers, Doctor, but sometimes what matters most isn't what gives a return. It's what gives meaning, and you've got nothing to do with that." Liam added, still looking firmly at Evelyn. "Jack doesn't have to worry about anything. This renovation's on us, and if you think it's a waste, that's your problem." Evelyn took a deep breath, as if about to say more, but seemed to realize she'd lost the argument. With one last scowl, she turned on her heel and marched down the steps, muttering something no one cared to hear. As her car sped away, the sound of hammers filled the air once more, and the heavy atmosphere left with her. Jack looked at Liam and Tony, a small but sincere smile forming on his face. "You two don't know how much this means to me. Truly." Tony gave him a light pat on the shoulder. "We know, Jack, and this is just the beginning." Liam smiled easily. "We're only getting started." Jack took a deep breath, glancing around. For the first time in a long while, he felt that things were finally changing, and this time, for the better. Liam looked at his father with a satisfied smile. "I don't think she was expecting that." Tony chuckled quietly and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Sometimes all people like that need is to know someone's watching." Then Tony turned and said firmly, "Nobody messes with our family, Jack. And now, you're part of it." Jack blinked, trying to hold back the emotions threatening to overflow. For the first time in a long while, he felt protected, and that more than any money or repairs to the house was the greatest gift he could receive. Jack stood on the porch, trying to process everything that had just happened. The breeze blew gently, but the weight of the past few years was finally starting to lift from his shoulders. He looked at Liam and Tony, still struggling to believe that these two were standing there, facing everything on his behalf. Liam took a step towards Jack, his smile steady and sincere. "I need you to understand something, Jack. This isn't just a one-off favor. We didn't come here just to fix your house and leave. We're here to stay. We'll walk with you for as long as it takes." Jack shook his head, unable to hide the emotion welling up inside him. "You've already done more than I could have imagined. You've fixed my house, given me hope. I don't even know how to thank you." Tony smiled gently and placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. No need to thank us. This is the least we could do. You gave me my son back that day. He could have been lost, but thanks to you, he found his way. Jack took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears threatening to fall. I never did anything expecting something in return, you know that, right? Liam smiled warmly. And that's exactly why we're here. When someone does good without expecting anything back, they deserve all the good in the world. Jack wiped his face, subtly brushing away the tears. I never thought anyone would care about me like this. After all these years, I figured I'd been forgotten. Tony patted him firmly on the shoulder. Forgotten? Not a chance, mate. Your kindness was never forgotten. We're here to make sure you have what you need today and always. Liam looked at Jack, his eyes shining. If you need anything, anything at all, just call us. We're not leaving your side. Jack smiled, his heart filled with gratitude and relief. Knowing I'm not alone, that's worth more than anything. Liam and Tony exchanged glances and smiled too. You'll never be alone again, Jack, Tony said. This is just the beginning. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past finally lifting away. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. A few weeks later, another surprise came Jack's way. He was sitting on his porch having a simple breakfast when he saw Liam and Tony's car pull up again. This time their smiles were even bigger, as if they couldn't wait to share some good news. Liam hopped out of the car and walked straight to Jack, skipping any formalities. Jack, we've got something else to tell you. Jack raised his eyebrows, curious. More? What have you two been up to now? Tony climbed out laughing and folded his arms as he looked at his friend. We bought Bob's farm, that bit of land right next door. Jack nearly dropped his coffee cup. What, you bought Bob's farm? Liam grinned widely. That's right, it's going to be our second home. When we're not here, it'll be a place to relax. And when we are here, we'll take care of things together, as a family. Jack stood still for a moment, processing it all. But why did you do that? It was just an old house. You didn't need to spend so much. Tony stepped forward and rested a hand on Jack's shoulder. Because we want to be close by, Jack. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. If you ever need help, we'll be just next door. Liam added, his eyes sparkling. We're fixing it up too. It'll look great and you're welcome there anytime. If you need anything or just want some company, you know where to find us. Jack felt his chest tighten with emotion. For so many years he'd fought alone, carrying the weight of life without knowing if he'd ever find peace. And now these two men, who had once been strangers, were offering him something he never thought he'd have: family and real support. You don't know how much this means to me, Jack murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Liam smiled softly. Oh, we know, that's exactly why we're here. Jack took a deep breath, trying to keep the tears from falling. I never imagined that giving a boy $10 on the roadside would change my life this much. Tony smiled, glancing at his son with pride. Like we always say, Jack. You reap what you sow, and now it's your turn to harvest what you planted back then. Jack chuckled quietly, his heart feeling lighter than ever. I think I've finally found what I didn't even know I was looking for. Jack stood quietly for a moment, his gaze drifting to the trees around them. The breeze gently rustled the leaves, and for the first time in a long while he no longer felt the weight of loneliness. It was as if a knot that had been tied in his chest for years had finally come undone. He took a deep breath, searching for the right words, but none seemed quite enough. You don't know how much all of this means to me. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as he clutched his hat in his hands to mask the emotion in his face. Liam smiled, that same calm smile Jack had seen in the boy on the road all those years ago. We know, Jack. That's why we're here. You're not alone anymore. Tony stepped closer, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder, a simple gesture but one full of meaning. The truth, mate, is that we don't just do business. We make sure to look after the people who matter, and you're one of them now. Jack rubbed his face, trying to hide the tears beginning to fall. I spent so long thinking I was just another old man on his own. He looked at them, his voice breaking. But you've made me feel like I've found a real family. Tony gave him a warm smile. Because that's exactly what you've found. And once you're part of our family, Jack, there's no going back. Liam added with a light but sincere tone, "We're in this together. No matter what happens, you'll always have us by your side." Jack let out a small laugh, a mix of a sob and a sigh of relief. "I thought I was just a tired old man at the end of the road, but now I feel like someone who's been given a second chance." Liam gave him a friendly pat on the back. "It's not just a second chance, Jack. It's a whole new life." Jack looked at the two of them, still trying to process it all, but with a genuine smile on his face. "And I think for the first time in a long while, I'm ready to live it." Tony chuckled softly and wrapped his arm around Jack's shoulder. "That's the spirit, mate. Now we move forward, together." And so, as the three of them stood there looking at the renovated farm and the workers putting the final touches on the house, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not just from the repairs made on the outside, but from the restoration that had taken place within. The certainty that from this moment on, he would never be alone again. The weeks went by quickly, and each day brought a new change to the farm. The sounds of hammers, saws, and the cheerful voices of workers finally gave way to the peaceful silence of nature. Jack's house, once full of cracks and with a leaking roof, now looked completely different. The walls had been painted a soft cream color, and the new red tiles on the roof gleamed in the sunlight. The porch, which used to creak with every step, was now solid and spacious, with rocking chairs ready for a good chat at sunset. The windows, once dull with dirt and time, were clean, letting in light that brightened every corner of the house. Jack slowly opened the door and looked around, barely believing what he saw. The polished wooden floor seemed to invite his tired feet. The kitchen, where he had prepared so many simple meals, was renewed with new cabinets and a sturdy table in the center, perfect for gathering friends. Every part of the house exuded a freshness and comfort he hadn't imagined feeling again. Tony leaned against the doorway with a satisfied smile. "So, what do you think, Jack?" Jack chuckled softly, still a bit overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say. It feels like I'm in a new place." Liam stepped in behind him, wearing his usual warm smile. "We didn't just want to fix the house, Jack. We wanted you to feel like you've got a real home, a place to rest and live well." Jack ran his hand along the doorframe, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingers. "You didn't just repair the house. You fixed a part of me that I thought was lost." Tony let out a light laugh. "Good to hear that, mate. Now you can stop worrying about the roof falling on your head and focus on what really matters." Jack smiled, his eyes glimmering with gratitude. "And the rest of the farm? How does it look?" Liam grinned proudly. "Come and see." They stepped outside, and Jack was amazed at the transformation. The fences had been reinforced and painted white. The garden surrounding the house was in full bloom, bursting with color and life. In the field, the soil looked more fertile than ever, ready for new crops. The old barn had been restored, with new doors and neatly organized tools on the shelves. Jack took a deep breath, enjoying the fresh air and taking in every detail of the place he had tended alone for so many years. But now it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like home. "It's beautiful," Jack murmured, unable to hide his emotion. "I never thought I'd see this place like this again." Liam placed a hand on his shoulder, smiling. "Now you don't have to worry about anything anymore. This is your place, Jack, a place to live in peace." Tony, arms still folded, looked out over the fields. "And whenever you need us, you know where to find us. It's not just the house that's been renewed, Jack. It's your life too." Jack looked at them both, his heart light and full of gratitude. "You've done more for me than I ever imagined. I don't know how to repay you." Liam chuckled softly. "You already did, Jack, a long time ago, when you gave me those $10. The rest we did because it was the right thing to do." With a smile on his face and peace in his heart, Jack gazed at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I think I can finally rest now," he said, his voice calm and joyful. Liam and Tony smiled alongside him, and the three stood there in peaceful silence, watching the sun disappear slowly as a new chapter began in Jack's life. One quiet afternoon, Jack was sitting in his rocking chair on the porch, enjoying the sunshine. Liam appeared out of nowhere, climbing the steps with a grin and a bag in hand. "I brought some fresh bread for us, Jack," Liam said, handing over the bag with the air of someone who knew it would brighten his friend's day. Jack smiled as he took the bag. "You're spoiling an old man, son." Liam shrugged, laughing. "I'm just taking care of our family, Jack." Not long after, Tony arrived too, walking across the field with his hands in his pockets and a relaxed smile on his face. "So what's on the menu today? Small talk and bad coffee?" Jack let out a hearty laugh, something that had been rare in the old days. "The coffee might be bad, but the company's good." The three of them sat on the porch, letting the conversation flow as it always did. They talked about everything and nothing at the same time. The rain that might come, the crops, funny stories from the past. It was simple, but it was all Jack needed. During those chats, Jack realized something important. It wasn't the financial help or the house repairs that had made the biggest difference. What truly mattered were those moments when he could be himself, surrounded by people who genuinely cared. "Do you two have any idea how much this means to me?" Jack asked, looking at them with a heart full of gratitude. Tony chuckled. "I think we do, Jack, and you mean just as much to us." Liam added with a sincere look, "We're with you, Jack, and that's how it's going to stay no matter what happens." Jack took a deep breath, feeling a lightness in his chest. "You showed up just when I needed it most, and you didn't even know it." Tony stretched his legs and crossed his arms. "That's how the best things happen, mate. You show up exactly when you're meant to." That night, after another peaceful day with Liam and Tony, Jack lay down on his new bed, wrapped in clean, soft sheets he never thought he'd have. The open window let in the cool breeze from the fields, and he lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling a deep sense of peace. It was hard to believe everything that had happened. For many years, Jack had thought life was just a long battle with no hope of victory. The days blurred together, and he carried his burdens in silence, never expecting anything good to come his way. But now, everything had changed. Suddenly, he wasn't alone anymore. The house was no longer just a place where he hid from the world. It was a home, filled with life and waiting for good memories. "Who would have thought?" Jack murmured to himself, smiling as he stared at the ceiling. He thought back to the day he met Liam on the road. At the time, he had no idea what that simple act of kindness would lead to. $10, a carrot. Something so small, yet it had changed not only the boy's life but his own as well. Now Liam and Tony were by his side, not just repaying what he had given, but offering so much more: friendship, support, and the assurance that he would never have to face life's hardships alone again. Deep down, Jack realized that what he had done that day wasn't just giving money. He had planted a seed. And now, after all these years, that seed had grown and borne fruit in ways he could never have imagined. He rolled over in bed, closed his eyes, and felt lighter than he had in a long time. "You really do reap what you sow, don't you?" he whispered to himself, letting a smile creep across his face. Life hadn't always been kind to him, but in the end, the kindness he had sown, even unknowingly, had returned to him in a far greater form. Jack felt complete, as though all the pieces of his life had finally fallen into place. Sleep came easily, and just before drifting off completely, he thought of Liam and Tony, of the laughter they shared on the porch, the repairs made with care, and the promises of true friendship that would last beyond words. He knew without a doubt that what he had received wasn't just a reward, it was a new beginning. And so as the night wrapped the farm in silence and peace, Jack fell asleep with a heart full of gratitude, knowing that kindness is never wasted, it always finds a way to come back. Alfonso's story shows us that kindness, even in difficult moments, can change lives in ways we never imagine. A simple act of generosity, planted on a hard day, can bloom later, bringing hope and renewal. Sometimes, helping someone may seem small, but for the one who receives it, it can mean everything. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you saw a lost boy on the road? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to read what you think. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps us keep sharing stories like this. And hey, there's another moving story waiting for you. Just click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. See you there.